Hi, I'm planning to do a number of videos based upon the idea of Mashiach. And I wanted to start with something that I was studying this last Shabbat and want to sort of talk about some of the things that I see in there. And obviously, it's going to be about Mashiach centered for this portion. I plan to do other halakhic ones as well in a different place and a different time. But I really want these videos to be focused on the idea of Mashiach. And so if I find something in the Torah portion for that week, I hope to be posting these on Motzi Shabbat or shortly thereafter. I do want to sort of talk a little bit about some of my sort of basic principles that I want to make sure are understood. One thing that I find is really important, and it sometimes happens by Messianics in general, and is something that is a little bit difficult. People don't really like to be focused in a Peshat. There's a general rule that applies to Jewish hermeneutics or interpretation of scripture. And the idea is that if it's found in a Peshat, a verse cannot depart from its Peshat. It cannot depart from its plain meaning. And so we really want to bring out the plain meaning. We want to really be founded in the plain meaning. Many people who are interested and excited about Mashiach tend to go towards the Kabbalistic sources right away. I don't have a problem with the Kabbalistic sources. I don't have a problem with some of the different interpretations that the other sources have, as I'll bring up Or Chaim HaKodesh in this discussion. But we need to make sure that we root ourselves in the Peshat of the verse's meaning. And so I want to really focus on that a little bit tonight. I will get into some other things, a little bit of halakha, a little bit of Mishnah Torah, and a little bit of Or Chaim HaKodesh. And so I just want to sort of talk about those things. So right here, we're going to start in Rashi, on Vayechi in Bereshis, Genesis 49, verse 10. Everybody kind of knows where I'm going with this, or probably can assume pretty well. Ad ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh arrives. Shiloh is the King Mashiach, the Messiah. For the kingship is his. Okay, and so I'm using an R scroll Rashi here. Just so everybody's aware of what I'm using and where I'm coming up with this from. Bereshit, and so one of the notes says it's talking about in Bereshit Rabbah 98:8 and 99:8, and the Talmud in Sanhedrin 98b discusses Mashiach's given name. One opinion there adduces our verse to prove that his name is Shiloh. Okay, so the Talmud also affirms that his name is in fact Shiloh. Shiloh is seen as a form of Shiloh, his. The verse indicates that the kingship, which is represented by the rod, will remain with Judah until the one whom the rod belongs will appear. See, Nachlas Yaakov, Siste Chachamim, Matanas Kahuna to Bereshis Rabbah. Okay, so our scroll is giving other references here to show where Rashi is getting his understanding of this is about the name of Mashiach. Okay, and thus an Onklos interpret it. And so Onklos also understands this to be Mashiach as well. So Onklos is an early Targum of the Torah. So he took the Torah and translated it from the Hebrew into Aramaic, which was the common tongue of a lot of Jewish people at his time. And so he understands it as Mashiach. And so when he does his translations, he translates the understanding that the Jewish people of his time would have had of what this verse is talking about. So even Onklos says that this is talking about Mashiach. Okay, and an Aggadic midrash, so a midrash which is Aggadic in nature, so it's not halakhic in nature. It's coming forth to tell a general principle, a story. This is also something that I think gets a little bit confused in a large portion of Messianic circles, is what Aggadic is. It is really focusing on teaching a message, or it's kind of, if you think of it in the sense of a parable, it could be considered in that way as well. Okay, a midrash, it means searching out, something to search out, and a searched out parable explains Shiloh as a contraction of the word Shi-lo, gift to him. As it says, V'yavlo Shi-la-mora, they will deliver a gift to the revered one, okay? And so, again, this is Art Scrolls Understanding and Art Scrolls Elucidation, which is an Orthodox publication from my hometown. Now, it's coming from my hometown of Rahway, New Jersey. Psalm 76:12. Rashi's Midrashic interpretation sees a revered one of that verse as Mashiach. Both interpretations that Rashi brings here agree that Shiloh refers to Mashiach. They disagree only as to how the word alludes to him. So I believe he's speaking of Onkelos and also of the Midrashic interpretation. Okay, so you have a Midrashic interpretation, which says it is speaking of Mashiach, and Onkelos is also speaking of Mashiach. They're just talking about that it differs in a certain way. Okay, so this is just important things to understand with Rashi's understanding. So the next verse is a verse that I want to go in, or the next portion of the verse is a verse that I want to continue in. And his will be an assemblage of nations. The term Yechachamim means the gathering of nations. For the yud is an essential element of the root. Like the yud in your appearance, there are times when the yud is omitted from it. There are many letters which function in this manner. They are called an essential element which may fall out. For the instance of the noon, neguv, gores, smites, and the shech, bites. And the olive of the achti, in may my statement enter your ears. And of the achvot, in the wail of the sword. And the seth, in a jug of oil. In this case, too, the expression Yechat Ami means a gathering of nations. Okay, so Rashi really wants to look at this word Yechach and what does it mean. And so Rashi understands it as a gathering of nations will come to Mashiach. Okay, this idea that the assemblage, he will have an assemblage of nations. It won't just be one nation, it'll be an assemblage of nations. Okay, so let's see if, well, let's continue a little bit before I get into that. As it says, and the people will search their way to him. Okay. So this is a reference to Isaiah 11:10. Having interpreted Shiloh as the Mashiach, Rashi cites this verse which speaks of Sherosh Yishai, the descendant of the root of Jesse, to show how his will be an assemblage of nations, applies to Mashiach. He sees the people searching their way to him of the verse in Isaiah as being the same as the assemblage of nations of our verse, okay? So the people searching their ways to him, to Mashiach, is an assemblage of peoples, okay? Something very, very important. Rashi's going out and he's showing you in a bunch of different places where this word means an assemblage, and it means an assemblage, okay? It's very important to understand sort of the basic meaning of the words that we're talking about and what Rashi indicates from it, okay? Okay, peoples will search their way to him. Similar to Yechachet of our verse, we find, and I will mock a father, and to mean literally the gathering of a mother. That is the accumulation of wrinkles on her face because of her old age. And then in Talmud we find related words in which the yud is omitted. That they would sit and assemble gatherings in the marketplaces of Nahandria and tractate Yevamos. The verse could have said Chachit Amim, instead using a form in which the yud falls out of the word, as it did with the citation from Yevamos. Okay, so this is just important. Okay, so Rashi is just sort of explaining that this is the verse could have said something else. It said this for a certain reason. To say that it's talking about an assemblage of nations in Isaiah 11 in Psalm 76. Okay, Psalm 76 is speaking of Mashiach. Isaiah 11 is talking about an assemblage of nations in relation to Mashiach. Okay, so that's Rashi, and that is a Pashat understanding of this text. Okay, and I want to then go into the Sforno. The Sforno is another rabbi who also brings out Pashat understandings of the text. Okay, and so I want to explain a little bit of what the Sforno says regarding this verse as well. The scepter shall not until Shiloh comes. We'll start from until Shiloh comes. Until Shiloh does come. The word Shiloh is derived from two roots: shol, which means soul, and shilah, which denotes shalom or peace. And shalom means peace at the end. Okay, it's important. Peace at the end. The prophecy of Jacob that Judah will be ruler and judge only among his brothers will be so until Shiloh comes, i.e., until Mashiach comes. Okay, so he's saying that the kingship will come through Yehuda until Mashiach comes. Then he gathers that from the name of Shiloh, which is soul, which the bottom of your foot, the final part, the end, and shalom, peace. At the end there will be peace. Okay, and unto him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Okay, so but when Mashiach appears, there will be shalom be'esuf, peace at the end. Then his shall be the weakening of peoples, yechachet, similar to im kaha ha-barazel. If the iron be blunt, those who remain weakened after destruction of their kingdom will be obedient and subjugated to Shiloh, Mashiach, as it says, vechachar kol bani shade, and break down all the sons of Shet. Now this is really interesting because Sforno is also Peshat and Rashi is Peshat, and they seem to be disagreeing on this word of what the assemblage means. Okay, you can either read it as assemblage or obedience. It can be both words in Hebrew. Okay, and Sforno is taking the interpretation of this word not to mean assemblage but obedience of the peoples, which means that they're going to be broken down, they're going to be shattered, they're going to be going to understand that their way is wrong. They're going to turn from their way and are going to come to the correct way. They're going to come to Judaism. They're going to obey Mashiach. Okay, they're not just going to be assembled to Mashiach, but they're going to obey Mashiach. They're going to be beaten in battle and surrender and have to come to Mashiach. Okay, so that when I read these two sort of pashats, it made me think of one thing. Okay, and it made me think of a halakhic work, which is Mishnah Torah. And in Mishnah Torah, there is the Rambam lays out many important things about Mashiach. Okay, now my Rebbe just so happens to be mentioned in one of these, and wanted to sort of pull out some of those ideas. Okay, and he prefaces it with a couple of other things that I want to deal with in another video. I do have answers for those. I do understand that you're going to have discussions with me about whether or not he built the temple, whether written law and the oral law. I understand that you may have some questions for me with that. I do have answers for those, and also fights the wars of Mashiach. And again, I understand that there are many people out there who go, well, he didn't fight the wars of Mashiach, he didn't build the temple's already standing in his time. But nevertheless, in the written law and the oral law, I am working on a place where we can see many of these things actually out there. But that's for a different time. I do have answers for them. I do understand that the qualifications are included in the Rambam's understanding of who Mashiach is. But I really wanted to get at the heart of what he says about my Rebbe and address some of those interesting aspects of it. And so I want to get right to that point. And so bear with me. I will answer those questions about that first part of Mishnah Torah in chapter 11, Halakha 4. But let me start with Yeshua. Okay. Jesus of Nazareth, who aspired to be the Mashiach and was executed by the court, was also alluded to in Daniel's prophecies, as Exhibit 11:14. Now, Messianics, don't get too excited right now until you understand what verse I'm talking about. States, the vulgar among your people shall exalt themselves and attempt to fulfill the vision, but they shall stumble. Okay, so it's saying that pretty much that Jesus is one of the vulgar ones among the people of Israel, okay? And that he will try to be Mashiach, but he will ultimately die, which earlier on, the Rambam also talks about if Mashiach will die, will be killed, that he will be disqualified from being Mashiach. Again, I have another answer for another time. But I want to get into this, okay? So he's talking about that he will be vulgar, he will try to exalt himself, try to be Mashiach, and will fail, he will die. He goes on, can there be a greater stumbling block than Christianity? All the prophets spoke of Mashiach as a redeemer of Israel and their savior who would gather their dispersed and strengthen their observance of the mitzvot. Okay. In contrast, Christianity, okay. Now, it's interesting to note, he's speaking here of Christianity. He's not speaking of Yeshua at this point. He's speaking of the results of Yeshua, okay, which is the idea of Christianity, okay, for a large portion. Cause the Jews to be slain by the sword. Okay, so we have the pogroms, we have the Holocaust, we have the Crusades, we have all these different places where, unfortunately, the Christian Church slayed millions of Jews by the sword. Okay, absolutely horrible. Goes without saying. The remnants to be scattered and humbled, the Torah to be altered, and the majority of the world to err and serve a God other than the Lord. Okay, so this is talking about the idea of idolatry, okay, and to serve someone other than Hashem, right, the one and true God, and also to alter the Torah, to say that the Torah has been nullified, that is no longer valid for Jewish people at all. Okay, when it comes to Gentiles have the 7 Noahide laws; they don't have the Torah, and so that idea is one thing, is a different issue. But for Jewish people, the Christianity also teaches that the laws have been nullified. Okay, not what the actual text says. You see a number of places where Yeshua actually supports the idea of keeping the law, the oral law and the written law. Okay, but Christianity has in fact done this, and this is attached. Christianity is attached to Yeshua. We cannot get away from this idea, from this fact. Yeshua is intimately connected with Christianity. Nevertheless, the intent of the creator of the world is not within the power of man to comprehend. For his ways are not our ways, nor are his thoughts our thoughts. Ultimately, all the deeds of Jesus of Nazareth, and that Ishmael, he's speaking of Muhammad here, who arose after him, only serve to prepare the way for the Mashiach's coming and the improvement of the entire world, motivating the nations to serve God together. As Zephaniah 3:9 states, I will transform the peoples to a pure language, that they will all call upon the name of God and serve him with one purpose. How will this come about? Okay, so the Rambam here is even admitting that there is some aspect of good in Christianity. There's some form of good in Christianity. And I would say that good is, of course, the person of Yeshua. There are many negative things, but one of the good things is this, okay? How will this come about, right? So he asks, how will this come about? How will Islam and Christianity be able to bring about Mashiach and prepare the world for Mashiach? The entire world has already become filled with the mention of Mashiach, right? So this is one of the things that Christianity, wherever they went, they brought the idea of Mashiach. And there's going to be this idea of a Mashiach, someone who's going to come. The Christian text says that he's going to be Jewish. He's going to come down. He's going to be Jewish. Okay. Torah and mitzvot. So anywhere that there's a Christian Bible you will also have the Torah and the mitzvot are contained therein. Okay. And they're clear for anyone to read. In fact, part of the reason that I'm here and part of the reason there's a large following of Gentiles in the Messianic world is because of the idea of this being placed there in the entire scriptures of the Bible, of the Christian Bible, okay, that they have the Torah and the mitzvot, saying these mitzvot were true, but were already negated in the present age and are not applicable for all time. Again, the actual text does not nullify the keeping of the commandments for Jews. Okay. Christianity though does. Others say implied in the mitzvot are hidden concepts that cannot be understood simply. The Mashiach has already come and revealed those hidden truths. So the notes here say, this is Chabad notes, Kohot publishers say that this is speaking of Islam, okay, with the hidden and revealed hidden truths, okay, that Islam supposedly says about the Torah. When a true messianic king will arise and prove successful, his position becoming exalted and uplifted, they will all return and realize that their ancestors endowed them with a false heritage and that prophets and ancestors caused them error. And in fact, we do see this actually happening now in the church, where you have a lot of people who are leaving the church and becoming interested in the Torah and the mitzvahs, okay? But fundamentally, we have to go back to the beginning of what I started speaking about today, and it's talking about one who is vulgar among you, and is speaking of Yeshua, will try to be something and will fail. He will die. Okay. This is where we get into sort of more of this esoteric. I was told not to use esoteric recently. Philosophical, maybe, metaphysical, deeper interpretation of the Torah. Okay. And so I'm going to get into that a little bit, because there really is something that is a pretty well-known concept for those who are interested in sort of the deeper meanings of Torah in Judaism. And it's brought about here by the Or HaChaim, and so I'll try to introduce it a little bit to you. I don't want to get too deep into it. It is a complicated subject matter, but I do think it addresses this idea of the vulgar one of Israel, thinking to be someone, okay? It's also something that I think a lot of my Christian friends, if you're a Christian or Messianic, you don't often think of it in this way necessarily either, but it is quite fundamental to being a follower of Yeshua. And so the Or HaChaim on this verse, on 49:10, speaks about something that is quite in depth, okay? And I'm reading from the article understanding of Or HaChaim, okay? And so it's an Orthodox understanding of Or HaChaim, but I'll just read what he says here and sort of try to elucidate about the vulgarness of Yeshua. Or HaChaim presents his own approach to this verse, answering all the above questions. This approach is based on a basic Kabbalistic concept, which Or HaChaim first explains at length. Okay, he explains it in another place. This is kind of a favorite topic for Or HaChaim HaKodesh. And so he explains it in another place, but this is a place related to this specific verse. However, the meaning of the verse has become clear following a pure and clear introduction, based on a concept that has illuminated our eyes to wonderful ideas shining from the light of our Torah. This concept is that Adam Harishon, Adam, the first man, was like a great tree, upon which grew all the holy souls that have come into the world from the day the world was created, and all the souls that are destined to come. When Adam sinned by eating from the tree of knowledge, the realm of evil in the world gained strength and took an untold number of these souls captive. Okay, so this idea is that all the souls were contained in Adam. Okay, so when Adam sinned, in essence, all these souls that were contained inside of Adam were affected by this sin. Okay, when he brought evil into the world, he mixed them together. Okay. And it took a number of these souls captive. Okay, the realm of evil took some of these souls that were inside of Adam captive, like in jail, if you will. Okay, you may search in the books of the masters of the true wisdom of Kabbalah and see how numerous are the holy souls taken captive by the klipa. Okay, so klipa is a Kabbalistic term for forces of impurity. Okay, so whenever I say klipa, it's a Kabbalistic term for forces of impurity, okay? Vulgarness, if you will, okay? Now, Hashem's people, the Jews, have been working since the day they became a nation to draw out and remove from the Klippa all of those souls that the Klippa had swallowed. Okay, so all the souls that were taken by vulgarness, by impurity, when Adam Harishon sinned. The work of the Jews has been to bring out those souls, to rescue them from the places of impurity. Okay. They've been swallowed by these forces of impurity. And in fact, they continuously draw and remove holy souls from the clutches of Klippa by means of the source of holiness that Hashem has implanted within us, namely through the study of Torah and observance of its mitzvot. So observing mitzvot is a way in which you're able to draw a holy soul out of the midst of the Klippa, okay? I may need to get back into Mishnah Torah again later, but I just want to go through this idea first because it's very complicated. And it's important for us to focus on. There are, however, other ways for captive souls removed from the forces of impurity, other than keeping Torah and mitzvah, okay? Occasionally, too, by means of a holy soul becoming unwillingly attached to an impure soul. So a holy soul becomes attached to an impure soul. This is shocking. This is Or HaChaim. He says, the holy soul will remove from the impure soul a holy soul like it that has been trapped in the Klippa. And so the holy soul, as the Arizal states it, as Rabbi Chaim Vital states it about what the Arizal said about this same topic in Sefer Gilgalim, will befriend the impure soul. Okay? And that has been trapped in the sources of vulgarity, the sources of impurity. Remember, the Rambam in Mishnah Torah says that one who is vulgar among you will try to rise and be something, but will fail. Okay? And the holy soul will come by to this impure soul, this vulgar soul. Okay? This is the inner meaning of what the verse says about Shechem, who took Dinah. His soul became attached to Dinah, daughter of Yaakov. Okay, this is also occurs a couple of weeks ago, but in the same place. And the Or HaChaim also talks about the same topic as well. There, the verse does not mean that Shechem's impure soul attached itself to Dinah, but rather that through associating with Shechem, the holy soul of Dinah drew out a holy soul of its kind that was inside the impure soul of Shechem, redeeming it from the Klippa, from the source of vulgarity. And our sages of blessed memory said, L'kuti Torah Adlo, that the soul that Dinah redeemed was the soul of the holy Tana, Rabbi Chania ben Treden, and that this is alluded to by the words ample, room, written in that passage in 34:21. For the word ample is an acronym for, no, they don't translate it. Okay. For Rabbi Chachina ben Teradon. Okay, so by the person's name. Also, at times, a holy soul captured by the Klippa will emerge into the world on its own, without any outside force. This occurs because the Klippa breeds its impure souls in the world, providing souls for the idolatrous peoples. And when these souls are placed into bodies, the captive soul emerges among them as well, entering the body of an idolater. But once it has emerged and is removed from the environment of the storehouse of the Klippa, of the storehouse of impurity, vulgarity, its nature and its desire will be to follow in the good path, since its essence is holy. This is a secret of the souls of the proselytes who converge on their own and long to find shelter in a protective shade of holiness. The inherent holiness of their souls drives them to connect to Hashem by joining the Jewish people. Or HaChaim discusses one final method by which a holy soul can be removed from the Klippa. It is this method that is the subject of our verse, as Or HaChaim will explain below. Also included in this idea is that by means of a very repulsive act, such as a sinful union, the wicked captor may release a holy soul that it holds captive, so that it emerges into the world in a place of Klippa, which is characterized by sin. Since a sinful and impure union is the domain of the klipa, it releases the soul in this environment, so the soul will be placed in even more repulsive conditions. So if you have a holy soul, okay, it will come from an impure union, and that soul will come into the world of its own. And the sources of impurity will try to make it even more impure. Okay? This is a holy soul that's really trapped and really powerful. And Oral Chaim is going to go into a couple of examples of this. Okay? You may ask where I'm going with this. Hopefully you'll see. The Rambam calls Yeshua vulgar, trying to be someone and failing. Okay? We're talking about a lot about vulgarity here. We're talking about the impure, the soul that is enwrapped in impurity. And the mission of Jewish people is to bring out that pure soul in the midst of impurity. Okay? This following case will demonstrate to you the above idea. The lovely soul of Ruth the Moabite emerged from a promiscuous act between a father, Lot, and his older daughter, which produced Moab. And the soul of Naamah the Ammonite emerged from a similar act between Lot and his younger daughter, which produced Ammon. When you examine this, you will realize that Ruth, the greater soul, from whom emerged the entire royal chain of the house of David, came from Moab, who was born from the more brazen sinner of Lot's two daughters. Her action of calling her Moab demonstrates her brazenness, as the sages of blessed memory stated in Bava Kama 38b. Naamah, on the other hand, whose soul was less lofty, and whose line of descendants became with Shlomo's son Rechavam, came from Ammon, who was born from a sin that was not as repulsive as that of his mother's sister. We see from here that the more sinful the act, the greater the soul that can be redeemed from the klipa through it. Why do we see this? Because David HaMelech, the king, the ancestor of Mashiach, the one through whom Mashiach needs to come, comes through the more repulsive act, Moab. Okay, Ruth was a Moabite. The incident with Lot also highlights a condition regarding the ability of a repulsive act to remove holy souls from the klipa. Now you should know that had someone other than Lot done the act that he did, the two fine young doves, Ruth and Naamah, would not have emerged from his action. This occurred only because Lot was great in his category, i.e., the category of evil. It takes a great person to extract a soul from the klipa, but that greatness may be either in holiness or in impurity. Lot was great in the area of impurity. But the category of evil also has levels, one greater than the other, in accordance with its nature. You may learn this from the hierarchy of idolaters, who are offshoots of the klipa, and whose ranks contain leaders with varying degrees of importance, great kings, relatively minor kings, ministers, and so forth. Because Lot was a great man in the rankings of impurity, he had the ability to extract lofty souls of Ruth and Naamah. Okay, so in order to extract a soul that is trapped in impurity, you have to be even greater. Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out, I mean, it goes on and it goes on. It does talk about Mashiach as well in this, this idea of extracting impurity from those places. I'll go on to just sort of, he talks about Yehuda and Tamar, and so just point out, but by means of this seemingly evil act, Yehuda was able to enter the domain of evil and remove a great treasure, extracting these two lofty souls. So I want to propose an idea to you. We see in Or HaChaim that there is this idea of a holy soul going in to extract pure souls from that which is vulgar. And if Yeshua, he's one who's called vulgar by the Rambam, goes into the places of impurity, into the places of idolatry, into all the places of the world. He extracts holy souls from it by an impure action, a seemingly impure action. Okay? The incident of Yehuda and Tamar, the incident of Lot and Moab will also produce great sparks. And Yeshua can also produce great sparks. He can prepare the way for the final redemption. In fact, I would argue that he is absolutely necessary for the final redemption, based upon what the Rambam and Mishnah Torah says about those who do not listen to the words of a true Torah prophet. It's as if they've thrown away all the Torah and all the prophets altogether. This is really important. This idea that is talking about Mashiach is also talking about all these places of impurity. The Or HaChaim HaKodesh is going into great detail, talking about how these impure places meet up, and then these pure people can go into these impure places to extract great souls. Say for Zerah Shimshon, he talks about the words of Mashiach are actually in talking about the idea of Mashiach ben Yosef going into the Greeks and in going into the Greek language itself and being able to extract these sparks that were trapped in the Greek world, in the Greek people, in the Greek language, and extract those sparks and bring them out. And so Yeshua is this one who goes into vulgarity in order to extract sparks that are trapped in vulgarity. But his essence is fundamentally pure and great. And he's able to extract all these sparks by going into this vulgarity. I'll leave you with sort of a final hint in this verse until Shiloh comes, which everybody agrees is talking about Mashiach. If you take the Rosh Tovot of the verse, Rosh Tovot being the head letters of the verse, and we know that it's speaking of the name of Mashiach from the Talmud, from Rashi, from Sforno, we see that it is in fact talking that it, and we take the head letters, I'm trying to find it now. Give me 1 second. Okay. 4, 9, 10. Ki yavo Shiloh ve'lo yechad amim asarim. Sorry, I wasn't supposed to say asari. Okay, that's after the sentence. So ki yavo Shiloh ve'lo yechad amim. That sentence. If you rearrange the letters of the Rosh Tovot, you get the sentence Ki Yeshua. Who is Yeshua? Rashi, Sforno, Or HaChaim, Malbim, the Gur Arya, the Ramban, the Baal HaTurim. Trying to think who else. Lots of other people. I believe even the Radak says it. This is speaking about the name of Mashiach. The Talmud in Sanhedrin 98b also says it's speaking about the name of Mashiach. Here we find a hint at it. Ki Yeshua. Who is Yeshua? Rambam says that he is vulgar. He descends into vulgarity in order to rescue great souls from vulgarity. And so this is sort of a very profound idea that I wanted to bring to you. Hopefully I explained it in a decent way. And it's my first video. I hope to get better as I go on with these things. There was a lot here, but I felt like I was going on, and it felt like it needed more explanation than I was giving it. So I wanted to cut it a little bit short, and it was a pretty long sort of teaching. But I hope you are excited about sort of what I was getting into. And if you have more questions, you can always email us at info@achavasinim.com. And we would love to answer your questions that you have on this teaching. If it was interesting to you, if I rambled on, if I sounded silly, stupid, If you want to curse me out because I'm a believer that Yeshua is Mashiach, we love that too. Email us at info@ahavasinem.com, and I'll try to get back to you and go into more detail. If you want to learn more about what Orchaim was saying, if you want to get more into what the point I was trying to make, I'd love to communicate with you on that. Shalom. Until we meet again. See you later.